Hello and welcome back, episode 10. Now, this episode, we are continuing our interview series. I don't really know why I'm calling it a series. Interview is probably the way that this is going to run for a very long time. So, to review, having Coach Bodner on, I thought it was an incredible interview. I thought Coach Bodner was very motivating. Shout out to all the people that listened just for him. I appreciate it, even though may not be the one that brought you there. Lots of comments and reviews and posts by Lisa. Thank you for your support. John has had a bunch of people reach out to him, tell him how his story kind of hit home with them, as I know it did with me. A lot of good stuff was said on there. I'm sure much more will come. Someday we'll have him on again. And an interesting thing, Bodner is very retrospective and very kind of thoughtful. So after our podcast ended, he was, man, there's a lot of things I wanted to say on there. And it's kind of some of the things that's the reason why I do an intro and that's why I do an outro for each episode, because there's a lot of things that in the interviews, I'm like, man, I wish I would have capitalized on this a little bit more. I wish I would have brought this up a little bit more. I wish I would have thought of this. And this is something that I plan on doing for a very long time. So it doesn't kill me that I might have missed a comment or two, because in the future, if I have a similar conversation, that might be something to throw in there. But it can be frustrating that, man, that was a really good thing. And 2 days later, I thought of a really good response that could have drawn out more questions and more answers. But it is what it is. We continue to grow. We continue to do better. I hope you enjoyed the last episode. This one, I think, is going to be another great one. So this is another poke at the football world of kind of where I've been the last few years and kind of the way my career has run. This is a different side of it. I think it's extremely interesting, and I think there's a lot of point of view in here that really hit home for different parts of the former player in me, the former recruit in me, the former coach in me, and now just the fan of the game. And being around so many kids that get recruited at all different levels, this answers a lot of questions, but it also opens up a lot more questions. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy the next interview. All right, welcome back. Another episode, another great interview ahead. So with me today, I have a good friend, someone that came through my building when I was a coach to recruit some of the kids, and we kind of tracked him around through a couple of schools he's been at. So got Coach Beard with me here. Coach Beard, how are you?
I'm doing great, Kev. It's good to be on and connect with you again. And I always enjoyed popping by the school. During recruiting was one of those I always look forward to. I was at a couple spots. I think I was at McDaniel, I was at Alvernia, Ship, and then Millersville currently where I've been at. Which it's always been good to get down there and see, and just the fun part of the recruiting process, just building relationship with coaches, man. So it's awesome to hop on and chat it up.
Right. So I knew you from back in the McDaniel days. And then Alvernia, you were at Alvernia during going into the pandemic, right?
Yeah, so we a little bit before there. I got there basically like summer of or spring of 2017, the end of spring 2017, and then I left there spring of 2018. So I was at Millersville for 2 years prior to the pandemic. So
Okay. So we already kind of dipped into it a little bit. Coach Beard is currently at my alma mater, Millersville, where I graduated from, where I'm not super proud of my football career, but proud of my academic career, and definitely have some shared experiences there. But to go back into, tell us a little bit about your bio, where you come from, and a little bit more about yourself.
yeah, absolutely. So, I grew up in, Westminster, Maryland, and then right around Manchester. Both my parents were teachers in Baltimore County. My dad, was at Randallstown High School throughout the mid '80s and early '90s, and he was, an assistant football coach there, and then head boys basketball coach. And then he left there and went to Hanover High School in Pennsylvania for the mid '90s, and then went back to Century High School where he retired from. And then my mom was a teacher in Baltimore County for a long time. She was a lot of places. So, grew up in Maryland, and then high school, moved up and went to high school at DeLone Catholic in Pennsylvania. And then, ended up going to Shenandoah University in Virginia for college. And honestly, I never intended to really go to college. I wanted to go military. I took the ASVEP. I was, wanted to be a Marine and, go, explosive stuff like that, have some fun. So, but really, I had, I had a really good high school coach, Dennis Frew. He's actually inducted into the Pennsylvania High School Coaches Hall of Fame. Tremendous coach. He was at Delone there for 30 plus years. We were actually his last class, the seniors that I was with. And, he, along with, our defensive coordinator there, Mick Orndorff, really helped me, get an opportunity to go play somewhere. And I visited some schools. I had a good senior year, and I visited a school out in Indiana, Manchester College, and I had a great visit, but it was, 15 hours away from home, just too far. I visited, Bridgewater and Shenandoah University. And, the thing I remember about Shenandoah was, I had three of the coaches there actually called me on the phone and, wrote me handwritten letters. And this is pre-Twitter, you
Right,
couldn't even
right.
text message back then. This is, you're talking about old school recruiting. So, it was really cool. And, I remember the head coach, calling me on the phone, and he was very honest and upfront. He's like, "Hey, your first year, you're probably going to be, a guy that's on scout team and develop. Your second year, you have an opportunity to, compete on special teams, be a rotational guy and travel. And then, it'll be kind of be from there." So, I mean, it was, a great experience, and I made a lot of lifelong connections there. My, defensive coordinator there my first year was Gary Fisher. Coach Fisher coached at a couple other stops at Eastern Kentucky, and now he's a head high school coach in the state of Georgia. He was a tremendous impact my first year, and then when I got into coaching, I actually went down and stayed with him for a couple of days when he was at Eastern Kentucky and learned a lot from him. So just a tremendous, impact. And then, Brock McCullough, who's a defensive coordinator there.
I remember
Coach Brock
Brock.
actually helped me yeah, he helped me get my first, college job at Allegheny College. He played with the defensive coordinator there, which helped me get an interview there. And then Coach Tyrone Bell, who was my guy, he was my second position coach, at the linebacker position, and he helped me actually, make the connection with my current boss, my current head coach, JC Morgan, and he had a lot of connections at Shippensburg to help me get there. And been tremendous impact. And then Calvin Oliver, who's still there, is now the defensive coordinator. He was my position coach as well. So I was just very blessed to have a lot of people that were in my life that were really helpful, in the process. Getting an opportunity to go play and get a degree. And I think that's kind of why I got into coaching. I got into my second year, at Shenandoah. I'm like, man, like, all right, what do I want to do? And I remember sitting down with Coach Bell and talking about like, hey, like how do you make a career out of this? How do you make a living out of this? And we had a really good, serious, sit down conversation. He tried to talk me out of it, but he could tell that I loved it and wanted to do it. And from that day forward, my sophomore year, my junior, senior year, I was reading any kind of football coaching book or coaching book I could find. I was connecting with people. And then, at that time, Randy Edsel was still at the University of Connecticut. So I wrote him a letter and said, hey, you're a local guy who's from the Hanover, PA, Glen Rock area. What advice would you have about, wanting to become a coach after college? And he invited me to come up and work his camps. And this was at the time where they still did the overnight camps. So, I go up there and I made a lot of great connections. There were some great coaches there at the time. Joe Moorhead was the offensive coordinator there. Todd Orlando was there. He was the defensive coordinator. Hank Hughes, Andrew Briner, who was a grad assistant there, who actually was from the Hershey area. He actually helped me, prep for my interview at Allegheny. Shane Fogarty. Shane's now working for Verified Athletics, and he was a GA there as well. And then John Hooley, who actually I worked with both camps, at the receiver position, and John's now a head coach at Avon Farms up in New England area, and he had a lot of different stops too. So just I was fortunate to be around a lot of guys that took a liking to me and were really able to help guide me and connect. And I ended up we graduated and get my first coaching job at Allegheny College, and I worked with Mike Kasherba, who was the defensive coordinator there. He's now at Lehigh as a special teams coordinator, and then Mark Matlack, who was a phenomenal first boss. I mean, he taught you the basics of how to run a room, how to draw on the board, with your presentation, to connecting with your players, to recruiting. So I mean, it was a great first stop as a first coach. And then I've just been blessed. I've worked with a lot of great people. I worked with Rob Wanger there at Allegheny. I worked with, at McDaniel with Coach Mike Hoyt and Coach Mike Daly. Both those guys were tremendous. And then I was a GA with Keith Bruno. Keith's now, special teams analyst at Penn State. We've kind of grown up in the business together. So he's been a very close friend of mine. And then I was at Shippensburg. I worked for Coach Mack. And I was the defensive GA, so I was with him all the time, and Mike Burkett and Coach Lee, and then that's how I got a chance to really get to know Coach Morgan. We spent a lot of time together there when he was the offensive coordinator, and then from there I went to Seton Hill for a month as a restricted earnings coach, and then went to Alvernia with Coach Ralph Clark for an upstart program, and was with him for a year, and then Coach Morgan got the head job at Millersville, and it's been a great spot. I've been there ever since, and been coaching special teams and linebackers, and really like what we've built, and turning a program around. So it's been an awesome experience.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've seen you kind of move from program to program and people in well, first of all, going back to the recruiting piece, kids take for granted recruiting nowadays. I
Yes.
remember putting together my DVD and having the tower stack of DVDs where I had to plug
Yes.
them all in. I had to burn them. I had to
Put them
put them in
in.
envelopes and hope they made it. I think they only
Yep.
made it to two schools and I only got one invite. Kids they're spoiled.
Oh yeah,
Um,
a couple clicks, and like you just trying to get in touch with a coach. I mean, like I said, there was no Twitter, there was no Snapchat, there was no like even Facebook, like was
you're going
like
on the
really
internet
just
and looking up phone numbers and hope you get
yeah, phone numbers, and you're sending like you said, you're sending out the DVDs and like the mini cassette tapes, and just like you're hoping somebody will be able to look at it and stuff like that. I remember my coach retired, and they were trying to find, because like apparently when he retired they like moved offices, and they were trying to find like all the DVDs and stuff,
right.
and it wasn't on Huddle like it is now. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, just go to Huddle, it's there. So like they were like
We had
searching and trying to find
Apex.
games, and it's like these coaches are asking for film, and it's like, oh, I need film. So but like like you said, we figured it out and it worked out. But yeah, the kids have no idea. And like I just remember getting letters in the mail. That was cool. And like coaches calling you on the phone, and even just like looking at how visits have changed. Like I remember you went for visits. It was like you went, you did a tour, you talked some football, you ate at the cafeteria. You did an overnight, you did stay with the players, but like all the stuff now, like the jerseys, the
Right,
like the
right.
whole it's so different.
Yeah.
It is for sure.
So like I said, I've seen you bounce around a couple programs as you're climbing in the ranks like you have done very successfully. So first question is, what's that like? But also it's kind of a shout out to all the people who have reached out to me throughout my career and other high school coaches, and they're like, why don't you just go to college? You see how much work it is. Like it is not just like a let me go try it, let me go dip my toe in that water. I mean, these coaches are climbing from GA all the way up to head coach, and it takes them 30, 40 years. So it's a credit to you and your work, but what has that journey been like?
Well, I think the first thing is you've got to really love it. You're not starting out going to make a lot of money. I didn't get my first time actual full-time coaching job with a full-time salary until I was at Alvernia. So I was my late 20s. So, I spent the first 5 to 6 years, as an intern. And then, I was a GA at McDaniel, and we had housing, and, we had a couple meals in the cafeteria, and we were taking Tupperware to make sure we had enough, for the weekends. And the best part was if you had a recruit on campus in the recruiting season, you got a meal plan at the cafeteria. So you tried to make sure that you had one in the morning, and then you had one in the afternoon. So you got lunch and dinner. You made work it out. But the climb was just having a passion for it. Just wanting to always constantly learn. And I think the thing that I've always tried to remind myself, even how now having been in a place and been more established, is like keeping that hunger of what it was like to consistently try to learn, try to network, try to connect with somebody. It can be a lonely profession at times. I didn't meet my wife till I did my second grad assistant job at Shippensburg, and she had got it, she understood it. She saw me making nothing as a GA, and been fortunate to go through the profession with her, and we have a house now. We're in a great situation. So I mean, it takes a special somebody that you really have to connect with from that standpoint. And you're gonna have to put the time in. You've got to look at long term what your goal is, what do you want to accomplish. And just it's hard work. You got to roll up your sleeves, and you're gonna have to do a great job. In your preparation, in your recruiting, and developing as a coach, getting better, connecting with people. It's a people business. You've got to be able to, build relationships, get back with people, call them on the phone, return texts. Like you've got to be a people person in it. And I think too, always realize that you don't know it all. You haven't figured it all out. There's always somebody that you can connect with to get better. And even when you get yourself at an established spot, you're constantly learning, you're constantly looking to evolve, you're constantly looking to change. And you look at even some of the greats, they were constantly evolving and changing. They weren't staying in the same structure or doing the same things that they've always done. They always had some base principles, but always trying to find a way to adapt. If you love football, if you love coaching, you have a passion for it, it'll find your way. And I think the other thing too is once you are on the other side of it, where you are, a full-time coach, you are established, take care of the young guys, take care of the young guys that, are going through it. I was very fortunate when I went through it. I had coaches that were, full-time and older than me that took care of me in terms of meals, in terms of, hey, do you have housing? Do you need help with something? So, I mean, I think, just taking care of, guys that are younger than you and just, it's the greatest profession in the world. It's the one profession where you can openly trade secrets with other guys. You don't have that if you're working for a big time business or a big time corporation, I think that's the coolest part. And, the best quote I ever had about it was Mike Daly said this to me when I was working with him at McDaniel, and we spent an entire summer, learning the defense. I mean, he taught me the history of football. We came in every morning. It was awesome. And the one quote he told me one time is there aren't in the coaching business, there aren't really winners or losers, there's survivors. And what he meant by it was, you're going to win your share of games, but you're going to go through moments and lose your share of games. The biggest thing is enjoy the journey and survive the journey, and not necessarily survive it. And what he meant was not necessarily surviving and like, oh, it's like awful, terrible, but like,
Still have that
there's
passion
going
to
to be
fight
ups and
through it.
downs. Yeah, there's going to be ups and downs and just working through it. And you learn a lot about yourself, and you're going to have moments where you're like, man, should I get out of this? Should I look at other things? And I kind of got into it the backwards way. I originally wanted to go and be a high school coach, but at the time I couldn't find a teaching job. So I was like, all right, well, let me go to college,
Well, if you
and
want one
if it
now,
doesn't work out, I go back. So it's
if you
it's
want a
it's
teaching job now, I know a couple principals that we could
yeah.
hook you up.
So it kind of got reversed that way. But no, I've been fortunate. And I think too is just the relationships you build along the way. You go and you have a recruiting area, but not just, hey, you're down by school, but really getting to know the coaches, like stuff like this. This is the fun part where, over time you've built relationships, you've built legitimate relationships where, hey, you can pick up the phone and just, hey, how you doing? Or hey, what's new? Or, or hey, you have questions about a kid, what can you tell me about this? But like you've built a legitimate relationship over time, and you've maintained it too. That it's not just like, hey, you're going in and it's business. It's you're going in to see a friend. That's the part I really enjoy about the on the road recruiting stuff.
Right. And a lot of that, even that support that you talked about from like the guys who have been in it for a while, the head coaches that supported you, that even carries down in the high school ranks. I mean, the first person to celebrate my wife and I getting a house, the first person to celebrate us having kids was the coaches that I had around me. So I mean that relationship piece there is much bigger than coach to player. It's coach to coach. Just the and one of my former assistant coaches used to say that this is as close to like warfare as we can get without lives being on the line. And like that kinship that they build in the military, this is as close as it gets and on the football field.
Oh, it is. Like, I mean, I think of our staff, we all kind of came up in it together, around the same similar age. We all had kids around the same similar age. Our offensive coordinator was best man at my wedding, Jeff Tomasetti, and he had twin girls recently, and I had my son, and then Coach Morgan, our head coach, has young kids as well, and just kind of going through that together and picking each other's brains, and even Coach Suchak, our defensive coordinator too. He's got young kids, so I think all kind of going through that together, and having spent a lot of time together. Look at us at Millersville. We've been there, 5-6 years as a staff. You've gone through some growing pains, but you've also gone through some successes, and that builds that camaraderie, and that's what makes it fun and valuable. And same thing, it's your friends outside of business. It's your friends outside of the workplace. Like, you're congratulating each other, on, life achievements. And that's the fun part of it. It's not just football and business, it's family.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about pre-COVID versus post-COVID. So you recruited, you coached, you did all the football things pre and post-COVID. So what are some of the bigger changes that you've seen in that time?
I think the biggest thing post-COVID was, we all kind of figured out that, we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can do it better. And we can still do this job, but we can But we can incorporate some more virtual aspects. I think from a recruiting standpoint, it changed in terms of, you can do stuff like this. You can get on a Zoom call with a recruit. You can connect with his family. You can do a lot of stuff virtually and from the work standpoint, as opposed to always, having to be in the office. But at the same token, there's going to be times, hey, we need to be in the office all together and, go through things. So I think that was kind of a major change, was kind of the influx of technology and, FaceTimes and, and Zoom calls. Like, one thing for me, like before COVID, I was not a big FaceTime guy from a
Right.
recruiting standpoint. I was a phone call, a text, but like, going through that, like you didn't get to see kids in school because you couldn't go to the school. So it was more of like, hey, how can I connect, before they even come for a visit? So that was something that, kind of really changed too. And I think from a work standpoint of just, you had all this, you had a lot of time because we didn't play that year, and you were trying to make sure that you were prepared. So really looking at, hey, how do you prepare? How are you, installing things? How are you teaching things? And, from a schematic standpoint, and then from a work standpoint, hey, how are we doing this? But I think from a personal standpoint, I put a lot of reflection into, like, hey, obviously winning's important and we want to do it and achieve it, but there is more to life than just the game. And I think, for me personally, like, you go through the pandemic and you see this, and you're like, wow, like, as a young coach, you're hustling, you're going through it, you want to rise and climb, and being a a young father, a young husband, trying to process that, and then just it kind of put a good pause to it, that, what, like, there are things that, as important as football is and as important as coaching is, there are things that are a little bit more important, than it is just a game. So taking it back to, hey, it's a game, um, needs to have, fun with it and stuff. And then the thing for me too, and my family personally, was, I had my son during COVID and the pandemic. So, like, for me, like, going through that process, like, it changed me as a coach. And I think it was kind of all encompassing in terms of having a time to reflect on who you are as a coach, having time to reflect where you're at in your career. And then also, hey, am I a patient coach as I need to be? Am I a little bit too hard right now? And, just a lot of self-evaluations, and really, hey, what are things I need to improve on? What are things that hold me back? What are things that, I'm not necessarily happy with myself? So a lot of, looking yourself in the mirror, reflection. And I think too, like, understanding, you get in the zone, football, and you get in the daily grind and the schedule, and, like, you're so, like, narrow-minded focused, like, you forget the outside world. And I think the pandemic really forced us to kind of put a pause and say, hey, like, there's more to the world than just football. As important as football is, as much as we love it, like, there are a lot of things out there. And I think it really helped us kind of, expand upon that. And then for me personally, really just, expand upon your faith. I think everybody during the pandemic was like, why is this happening? Like, why are all these people, getting sick in the virus? Why are people, suffering, like, cabin fever, like all these things were like these emotional things, like, psychologically, and just, human interactions. So I think, as well as really touching with your faith of, hey, what do you believe in? Why do you believe in it? And then really, like, going back to that, and for me, being as a Christian, hey, how can I get closer to God? How can I, really open up towards that? How can I really, make improvements with my daily interactions? And I think the nice thing was, once you got out of the pandemic, we had been through that, where we didn't have a lot of interactions. We didn't have a lot of, face-to-face things. And you didn't know, like, you're sitting there like, well, we're playing, like, we may get this game and then they may call the season because, this team will test positive or whatever. So, like, you literally were, hey, there's nothing guarantees, no promises tomorrow. So let's just enjoy it for what it is today. So I think that mentality was something that, I really personally pulled out of the pandemic, was, hey, enjoy each day for what each day brings.
Yeah, I think my second and your kid are a couple days apart. I think mine was
Yep.
March 11th. I was actually in the hospital room texting with the other coach, telling him that we couldn't play that game because we were actually playing a spring season. So I'm
Yep.
like, hold down on the labor pains. Like, here we go. Like,
Yeah.
coach, we have to cancel today's game. We had an outbreak, blah, blah, blah. Like, all right, now we can get back to business. Like, that was an interesting time for sure, both for hospital stays and for football coaching lives. So
Well, I think too, and even the hospital stays, it was so different. This is the first time I've ever gone through having a kid, but, like, there's really no room. You're all masked up, and, like, it just, like, the checkout process, and then, like, you're sitting there, and, like the whole time you're you're anxious. You're like, man, I'm in a hospital and there's this big virus and pandemic going out. And like, we just had a kid. Like, you're like, like I'm masked up and like washing my hands and like, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Like, and plus you're just trying to figure out being just a new father. I mean, it's a lot, and looking back on it now, it's like, man, you made it through and all that, but like going through it, it was a lot of anxiety. So
Yeah, it was a wild time. So hopefully that never happens again.
yeah.
So back to the the climb of Millersville. When I was there, I think in the 2 years that I was on the roster, I think we won 2 games. And in my 5 years of being at school there, they won, I want to say it was like 8 games. So it wasn't a pretty sight. Um, so I've seen since you guys have been there that there's been a crazy climb, and you guys have had a lot of success, and not just in recruiting but on the field. You've beaten some teams that I never thought were going to be feasible. Just the success there kind of brought me back into like, all right, Millersville, I did like it for a reason. I had a bad experience, and maybe some of that was my own fault, but now looking back at the success you guys are starting to have and the things that you guys are kind of growing, it's been fun to watch. But tell me a little bit about the climb that Millersville's had.
Well, I think a lot of it, goes into, Coach Morgan's vision, our head coach from the program, when he first got there, the biggest thing was, making sure we set a standard, and part of that was, great teams don't beat themselves. That's a big motto in our program. And coach, we'll get in team meetings and say, hey, great teams don't, the guys beat themselves. And part of that is not just on the field, but, academically in the classroom, retention, I think, getting there, that first year is obviously growing pains. We got there late as a staff and, you kind of went through that, but I think the biggest thing about the climb was just trusting that, hey, that there's a system to do it. That we're going to learn base fundamentals. We're going to teach football. We're going to teach relationships, and that's a big component of our program is long lasting relationships. We talk about that all the time, and it's not just the 4 years the guys are there, but seeing them through. And that was probably the coolest experience this year. We had our first recruiting class, graduate. A lot of guys that had been there that were part of that first class. So that was really cool. And I think, a big part of the climb was, continuing to get better in the fundamentals, continuing to, close the gap, to continue to do a great job on the road recruiting in terms of, our local areas, in terms of, areas that, Millersville traditionally, has gotten good players. And then just the identification process, building good relationships. And then I think as a staff, and all hands on deck approach, everybody is, working to get better and, getting to connect with everybody on the team, not just their position group. And I think the relationships as a staff, you look at our staff, and we've had, pretty much the main staff for the past, 5-6 years. So I think continuity has been huge with that. And really not buying into what everybody says. Oh, hey, you can't do this, you can't beat this team, you can't compete with this, or
That's huge.
it's, yeah, not buying into the what people are thinking. It's more of, hey, okay, and then use it as motivation to improve and get better, and really just hone in on what we can control. And the only thing that matters is the guys in this room, the guys in this building. And I think building those relationships where our players saw that we really did love and care about them. And some of our better players that really succeeded were guys that developed. They were guys that, coming into it, not a lot of people really wanted. We were guys that, brought them in, developed them. And then, we got some good players too, as well, that, we won some recruiting battles that was helpful. And just, I think that combination and meshing and gelling guys that, really wanted to be successful and were in it for the right reasons, and really took pride in what they did and how they approached it. So, I mean, it was a learning experience too. A lot of us were in, first time, experiences in terms of, hey, whether it was being a coordinator, different roles and, different, environment and atmosphere. So I think all those things together really helped the climb. And then I think, seeing the fruit, at the end of the tunnel. You've gone through all the, these, rough games and tough times and climbs, and just, trust and believe what you're doing. But, getting those breakthroughs, getting, beating an ESU at home, beating, a Shippensburg for homecoming, going up to Bloomsburg, and they hadn't won there since 1999, and beating, getting a win there. And then this year, we beat Westchester at home, and we're, competing with teams. We're up, 21-7 against Slippery Rock going to halftime. And I mean, obviously this year we didn't finish how we wanted, but like, to make those kind of, claims of, we were playing with some of the best teams in the league. We went down in 22 to Shepherd, and, we're going at halftime 24-17. So just, playing with teams and, continue to just, keep grinding after. And I think, that was the fun part. And, you put a lot of work in, your time, your effort, your energy, your blood, sweat, and tears, and just you put a lot of emotional investment. So just to see the climb, and then know that with where you're at, you're not even not done yet. There's still more stuff we want to achieve. There's still more things that we can look to get at, and just knowing that it's a great place. You're in a great atmosphere. You're in a great location. You've got great academics. You've got great facilities. The place is a place you can recruit and get kids there, from all over. I mean, you can get kids from Western Pennsylvania, you can get kids from Maryland, DC, Virginia, Jersey, Chester County, Lancaster, Harrisburg, Philly, all over that can go there. A place that attracts itself. So I think that's the fun part is, just continue to build with it. And it's been a fun journey. You look back now and you reflect on those first year, first couple of years, and you laugh, and there's some experiences like, man, going through it, like that was not fun or funny, but now you look back on it, like, you've seen kind of the process, go about it, and just the relationships you build with the players.
Right. So, I mean, some of the recruiting visits that I've been on, I mean, there's been times when I've been, and this is a legitimate one. So in high school, there's no recruiting allowed, but there's always kids that have two addresses because mom lives here, dad lives here. There's kids that in our area don't go to our school because of the football program's history. So I've always been trying to recruit kids, and I've always had a friend in you and Suchek where I can, hey, I'll give the kid the tour. Can you just give me 2 minutes, and I'll swing by. I'll introduce you as my friend, and we just need to, like, these guys are probably not going to end up. These guys are probably not going to end up being anywhere near. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. It's telling me we're timing out, but I'll just let it go. Um, so we've always been able to, like, me go up there and give a tour and be like, this is exactly like the facilities haven't changed. It's you guys have moved some things around and made some things look much better, and hung extra signage that made it look like a real football program from when I was there. But just the experience and listening to coaches talk I mean, for some of these kids, I have to go in there and pretend to be dad, but listening to Coach Morgan talk and you guys talk has always been like, man, there's just something different about the buzz here at Millersville. So it's been fun to watch from that point of view as well. So tell me about balance. It's kind of one of my staples. I kind of come at it as a standpoint from fitness, self-discipline, and relationships, and kind of how when you're chasing these big goals and these big dreams, that how do you keep everything balanced?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's something, honestly, that there's been times I've been great at it, and there's been times that um I've struggled with it. I think the thing that is that, when you are at work, be productive with your time management in terms of, mapping out your day, knowing, okay, I have these meetings, I have this I need to get done. And one process that I use, and I learned this from Mike Kasherba when I was at Allegheny, and I thought it was one of the best systems. He had, basically, if you had stuff to do, you had a color code system. So, the color code system was, red was you had to get it done today. Black was you had to get it done by the end of the week. And then blue was something that it could wait a little bit. It could wait a little bit in terms of, he had a Sharpie system. So it was, your red, black, blue, you wrote it down in terms of what you need to get done. And that was something that's been very beneficial from a balance standpoint of, while at work, hey, what's important, what's prioritized, what has to get done today, what has to get done this week, what has to get done, but maybe it's not a top priority right now. So that's always helped me from that aspect. And then I think balance too of, knowing there's times of the year that, hey, you're going to have to be very focused on work, but when you're not in those times, making the most of your time at home with your family. One thing I think, and I learned this from Coach Clark when I was at Alvernia, and I thought he did a great job with it, and it was something a piece of advice he passed on to me, was that when you're at home, when your family's awake, when your kids are awake, be present. Put the football stuff away. Be present. Have dinner with them. Play with your kids. Have a conversation, check in on how the day was. When they go to bed or they're slowing down for the night, now go back and finish the work that you need to get done. So I thought that was a great piece of advice, something that I've tried to use. Have I been perfect with it? No, but I think that's a big part of it. And then I think too is physically as coaches, taking care of yourself, making sure you work out, making sure you go lift weights, get some cardio, and make sure you're eating healthy, and that's something that I think this year that I really made a big focus in season was really, hey, what am I eating? Am I putting things in my body that are going to help me? And trying to avoid stuff that's yes, it's a quick meal, or hey, I can eat it quickly, but hey, is it really what I want in my system? Stuff like that. So I think that's the thing too, is just you got to take care of yourself, and being okay with, hey, not think, well, I'm working out, or, hey, I'm taking a break, or I'm spending time with family, like, oh, well, my opponent's doing this, that kind of paranoia. I think you've got to, put a pause onto it and say, you know what, like, by me taking care of myself is going to help me, when I am game planning for this opponent, or when I am at practice, because I'm going to be fresh, I'm going to be rested. Not that you don't put the time in, not that there aren't times that, hey, you got to grind through it, and you know, you got to work some late hours and stuff like that. But I think finding a balance there, and the other thing too is in the off season, obviously there's projects and there's things you want to do. There's always plenty of work there, but I think prioritizing, family time and being present. And one thing that I've never been great with, because um, is putting it away. There's a time you got to put it away. There's a time you got to say, you know what, football can sit here for a little bit, and let me do different things that are outside of football. Let me go to a concert. Let me hang out with some friends that maybe I normally don't hang out with. I think that's a big part of it too. And then I think too, making time for your faith. And checking in with that, and both self-reflection, reading the Bible, or, again, whatever you believe in, reading that, and then just, really self-reflection and talking with others too. Because I think a lot of times, um, we all deal with a lot of similar, things, a lot of similar questions, anxieties, demons, things that, we're not unsure about. And I think everybody's kind of, in that world where they're uncomfortable to really open up about it. But we have a lot more in common than we really think,
Right.
in terms of the anxieties of, hey, how am I as a coach? Who am I as a person? Who am I as a man? How am I as a father? How am I as a husband? How am I as a son? A family member? There's a lot of, questions that you have, and then self-paranoia. And I think sometimes we have our anxieties, they get into us. And I think sometimes you got to just say, okay, I have all this anxiety, but what evidence do I have to prove that this is actually true, or this is actually something I believe in? What evidence do I have that, hey, this demon is really, eating at me, is consuming me? Like, okay, well, yeah, it's there, but is it something that's just in my mind, and I'm really not, it's not true, and I'm just feeding it energy? So I think, understanding what kind of energy am I feeding different things, from a reflection standpoint, that kind of let it grow.
So, what kind of things do you look for student athletes? Listen up. What kind of things do you look for in student athletes during the recruiting process?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, what kind of person are they? What kind of character do they have? What does no, obviously their high school coach is the number one thing. Like, what's the high school coach's recommendation? Like, is this a guy that, is a hard worker, is a good kid, does coach believe he can play at the next level, type deal. And then, really what kind of character you have. And then from there, from the head coach, talking to other people in the building, the person at the main office, what do they think of? If you run into somebody random, or, hey, maybe an opposing coach that plays that same school, hey, what do you think of so and so over at, this place? But really just trying to gather as much information as you can. So obviously, number one is really the character standpoint. And then the second thing is, how are they as a student? And from that standpoint, hey, are they a good student? And maybe they're not a great student, but are they willing to work at it? I think that's the thing too, is that everybody has their different strengths and weaknesses. But if it's a guy maybe isn't a great academic guy, but is he a guy that's willing to work at it? And I think the other big thing is just accountability. And one thing that is really key that we'll look at is, we look at your transcript. How many absences and tardies do you have? Because I think that can show you that there's something there. Hey, it's that that's a little bit of a red flag. You have a lot of them. You don't have a lot of them. And then I think the other thing too is seeing how do they work, and talking to the teachers, talking to their head coach, and then just really getting a great idea from a character standpoint. Does that match up with what you want? Excuse me. Um, and then from there, excuse me, athletically, you're kind of looking at, hey, do they fit what you're looking for positionally? Do they fit? Sorry here. Do they fit what you want positionally? Do they fit? Athletically? Do they maybe play a different position in college than maybe what they played in high school. One thing that's huge for us is we'll evaluate you on both sides of the football so that you can, get an evaluation offensively and defensively to see where your best fit is.
Okay. So all the things that we tell with kids is true. Attendance matters, grades matter, work effort matters, your reputation matters, coach's opinion matters. So as if I'm saying it all over again.
Well, I think the thing too is it's you know the thing that for us at the end of the day is like you're going to go back to the high school coach. Like, yes, you can have, you can have your personal trainer, you can have, different people, and that helps, in terms of, you know, a secondary recommendation. But, the guy that's coaching him every day, that's been with him for 4 years or multiple years, is going to know him the best.
Right.
And a lot of times too, they've sent other guys off to college and played, and you yourself played at the Division II level. Like, excuse me, sorry, you know what it takes.
Right.
So I think that's the thing too, is that what the coaches, what the coach's recommendation is carries a lot of weight. And then that's the first thing, and then from there, the film evaluation, and then obviously character, who you are as a student, and then your work ethic. Are you a weight room guy? That's a big thing, is that, if you're not a weight room guy, it's going to be hard to succeed, in college, because the thing that guys don't realize is, in high school, you may be the guy. When you go to college, you're now playing with everybody that was the guy. So now it's who's the best player. And that, what determines that is your work in the weight room, how you take care of your body, how you develop your body.
Because at college, everybody was the guy at their high school.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Everybody was the guy. So now it's, hey, who's the best of the best, and what separates it. And then, from there, fit, not just physically and athletically, but also, from, knowing the system. If you're a guy that's, really athletic, but you don't know all the checks, and this guy maybe is a little bit less athletic, but is still serviceable and knows the checks, that's kind of a conversation that is had. And I think too is just, how important is it to you? Are you going to put the extra time in? Are you going to put the film study in? Are you accountable, or are you the guy that's, hey, you're always, cutting it close 5 minutes until the workout time, or hey, you're the guy that's late, whatever it might be. But that is huge, of just, if you're a weight room guy, that's really, because that's that game day like atmosphere. When you go into college, off-season conditioning, that it's a job. It is a job, and stuff. And there, you got to take care of your body. You got to develop your body, and you got to be disciplined. From that standpoint, and it's a lot of work, but that work that you put in is going to pay off, and that's what separates good from great. And that's something that I would tell anybody that's a high school recruit, is that hey, if you're not a weight room guy already, you want to start building those habits, getting invested, because that's what's gonna help you achieve your goals, especially too if you're a guy that, hey, athletically you were really good and really fast, but you don't have a lot of size to you, and you're not durable. I mean, you're playing 2 games, but you're getting banged up, and then you're having injuries. The thing is, when you, and this, but for your listeners, is that when you lift weights, you're building your body, your injury prevention, you're making sure that you're matching the muscle groups. If you're benching, you're doing pull movements, push pull stuff,
Right.
a lot of close kinetic chain stuff, a lot of hamstring work, all those things, so that hey, when you're playing football, which is still a physical game, your body's prepared, that it can take those hits, it can take that wear and tear, and you'll be able to recover. Whereas if you don't have that foundation, you don't have that base, now you're getting injury prone, and then hey, you're on the bench, and say it all the time, the best of ability is availability.
Right.
Being prepared, not being injured, and staying as healthy as you can. So I think guys need to look at it as like, I have, not that I have to lift weights. It's hey, like, by me lifting weights, I'm gonna keep myself healthy and keep myself out of the training room, on the units I want to be on, having an opportunity to play. Whereas if I don't take care of my body, and I'm not putting the time into the weight room, now I'm have more of a risk for injury. And then that can be a setback, and that setback can kind of, be a domino effect in terms of, hey, if I get injured, well, now I'm not, I'm not playing, and then hey, I'm not playing now. I'm frustrated, and then hey, now I'm skipping out in class, and then it kind of just goes from there. So I think that precursor of hey, put the time in the weight room, take care of your body. That's going to set yourself up not just from a playing standpoint, but academically, you're going to feel good and just really get you in that kind of mode of having a structure, having a schedule.
So you touched on the weight room and academics, and what are some other do's and don'ts for college-bound athletes?
I think the first thing is just your social media presence in terms of, and what I mean by that is not that you don't use it, but if you're putting negative stuff out there, that's a red flag. And that a lot of times, with the transfer portal, with the amount of high school athletes, that are there, there's limited opportunities. There's, year to year, there's limited scholarships, there's limited roster spots. Like, you know, don't put anything out there that you wouldn't be able to say to your family, or that you're not proud of, or that, hey, 5, 10 years from now, am I going to regret this on a job interview? And that goes from just, your language to just, even reposting something, even if you didn't say it, by you reposting it, you're saying that, hey, that you believe in that, or that you endorse that. So I think that's the thing too, is just, really having a good, clean social media. And the other thing too is just, be smart with what you put out there, and also don't think that hey, it'll just disappear. There's this thing called screenshots. You guys, I mean, I think that's the one thing with generations now that we didn't necessarily have to deal with as much, as that you know we didn't have the social media presence. So now everything that students do nowadays under the microscope. Everything that they do has a timeline, has something that people can go back to and look at. And I mean, one thing we have, we'll have companies come in and meet with our players. The first thing they look at is your social media, and they'll go all the way back. They don't care how back. I mean, they're going to really look. So I think keep your social media clean, have it be positive. Have it have it be very positive, and be careful what you're retweeting and endorsing. So I think you know that's a huge part of that right there. And then also while you're on a visit, how you treat people on a visit. How do you treat your family, in terms of that dynamic, that interaction? How do you treat just people, in the cafeteria staff? Do you say please? Do you say thank you? Custodial staff, are you very interactive with them? And never thinking that you're too good to do something, is something that's really big for us. And just how you treat people, just doing things the right way, can really go. And I think sometimes guys do things that help separate themselves. Like, I've seen guys at camp that, like, okay, the camp ends and everybody kind of breaks, and then you see a couple kids go over and they pick up pads or cones. Like, it's a small thing, but it goes a long way, and I think that's the thing too, is those small things can really add up. And the other thing too is you just never know who knows who, and then who's watching. There's been numerous guys over the years you recruit, and you hear a really good thing from somebody, and that person didn't even know that they knew me or knew somebody else. So I think just knowing that, hey, like, you never know who might know somebody down the line, and how that can positively impact you or negatively impact. So just always try to do things the right way. And then I think too, from a huddle standpoint, from a film standpoint, put obviously your best plays, but put versatility. If you have a good special teams play, if you have good plays on both sides of the ball, and don't necessarily pigeon yourself to just, hey, just playing one position. If be open to playing both sides of the ball, or maybe you were more of a defensive guy in high school, and the recruiter likes you offensively, or vice versa, whatever the situation might be. But be open to it. It's an opportunity. Don't be stuck at one position. And I think those are some things too. And then ask questions of the coaches that are recruiting you. And just really follow up with coaches. And one thing I think goes a long way is, if you're going through the recruiting process, pick up the phone and call a coach. Text, yeah, DMs, obviously that communication is going to occur naturally, and is a part of it. But a lot of times you can really build a relationship or really get to know a coach better by a phone call. And then I think too, when you're coming down to decision making time, and you're deciding where to commit and where to go, even if it's a school that you're not going to attend or not go to, pick up the phone and call the coach, because that goes a long way. Because that shows really good character. Guys that have stood out to me in a recruiting process are guys that do that. And with the way the transfer portal is nowadays, you always maintain relationships because you may go to school A and down the line, maybe something happens or, situation, coach leaves, whatever it might be. And now you're looking to go to school B, hey, you had maintained a good relationship. You did things the right way. Now you're looking for a new home. And whether the coach that recruits you at school B, now he's at a higher level school, he remembers you. And then, you can make that connection.
Right. I still every now and then we had a quarterback a couple years ago that I think he's going into his fifth year, maybe fourth year. The COVID season kind of threw everything off because everyone got that extra year. So I still get calls every offseason like, "Is he still happy there?" Like, let me check with him. I don't know.
Right.
Um, Another thing, that the phone call for the kids nowadays that probably don't use their phone call app ever. Some of these coaches are old school. Get on the phone and talk to them. They want to hear your voice. They want you to try and reach out to them. We always told the kids that you're interviewing them as well.
Yes.
So give them as many questions as you can think of. Make sure it's a good, genuine fit for you and for them. It's got to be a two-way road, or else it's not going to work.
Absolutely. And I think too with recruits is, when you go on visits, like, you know, ask the questions you want. Ask the tough questions. Ask, hey, coach, what's your plan for me over 4 years? Where do you see me fitting into your program? Um, what's year one to year two look like? What's the progression? Ask those questions and then, you know, look too into the academic programs of what you want to study. We all love football. Even if you have the opportunity and the ability to go to the highest level, you're only there 2.5 years. That's the average. So, what are you going to do the next, 60 years of your life? What's your plan life after football, looking like? So I think, internship opportunities. What are the schools that you're looking at, the internship opportunities? What are the alum connections, the alumni networks, those things are things that recruits want to look at.
And over the years, I've heard some of the silliest questions ever for some kids that you just on the spot. And we always tell them, have a few questions ready.
Right.
Some kids get all their questions and answers, and then they sit there and they're like, what's the food like? And I look at them like, hey, dum dum, it's the same food at every dining hall. Some places are better than others, of course, but that's a silly question. What's your female to male ratio? It's in every brochure that you'll ever pick up. So find some good questions, children. There's some good ones about football, about yourself. Again, it's a two-way interview. You need to interview them, make sure it's a good fit for both.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think sometimes too, the guys that really stand out in the recruiting process are guys that ask questions. So I mean, whether it's, hey coach, like why do you like coaching at Millersville or whatever school you're at, or why are tell me your story, or I know one that I like to even ask, like, people randomly, or even kids randomly. It's one I want to ask you tonight is, hey, if you could have dinner with 5 people, living or dead, and throughout the entire world of history, who would it be and why?
You're asking me now?
No, we'll save it. But that's one that I
Give me
always
time to
ask it,
think.
and I think it's a great icebreaker, but it also can have some feed off questions, and you kind of get a chance to connect. And I'll be honest, I've answered it like 16, 17 different ways because they're constantly changing. And you're like, I'd like to have dinner with these like 2,000 people,
Right,
over
right.
time. So
All right, so that's all my formal questions, but I do have a couple curveballs that I didn't send you ahead of time.
yeah.
So one is kind of going back to how much has NIL and the portal changed your recruiting?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely changed in terms of, that's a kind of a two-part answer. But the first part would be, I think the thing you end up doing now is you really, and if you're doing it the right way, you should maintain great relationships with your players anyway, but you end up re-recruiting your same players.
Like every year, right?
Yes, and the thing you're looking at now is that, you know, you're seeing more kids that they're only there 1 to 2 years and then they're trying to go up, and again, I can't blame them. They want to go play at the highest level. I get it, I understand it. But the thing that you're looking at from a recruiting standpoint is that you're almost looking at, hey, if you got a guy and he's a good player, you're going to play him right away, as opposed to waiting, because there's no guarantee he's going to be over 4 years. So I think you're looking at your rosters change in terms of, it used to be kind of a 4 year process. Now it's more of, a year at a time, 6 months at a time. But the transfer portal has definitely changed it. Now in terms of, for us, it's more of, you're worried about losing the guys that are currently on your roster, because they have some success and then they're looking to go up. If you look at our roster, we're still predominantly the high school athlete. probably 85% of the guys are high school players we recruit and develop. From that standpoint. So from kind of the negative standpoint is you may lose some guys. The positive standpoint is with a lot of the higher levels going strictly to the portal. For us, we have an opportunity to get some kids that by the old structure of how it used to be without the transfer, we probably wouldn't have gotten. So you get a chance and an opportunity to get maybe a higher caliber player or athlete that normally in a normal year in a normal recruiting cycle, no transfer portal, you probably wouldn't have been able to get to be able to get them there. And then I think the other thing too is looking at the portal is you may have an opportunity that maybe there's a guy at a lower level that develops. You may have a chance to, you know, um, get them from there. And then it also, really changes in terms of, keeping kind of, an eye on guys that you had a great relationship through the process in terms of when they go somewhere, hey, how did that year go from them? What are they looking at? But it's definitely been a game changer in terms of you know what you're looking at in terms of your current roster. The NIL stuff, not as much at our level at Division II. I think it's coming down eventually, but I have friends at higher levels that a lot of stories of hey, a guy was only gonna come visit if he got such and such and such and such, and it's it's a very interesting dynamic and a game at that level in terms of things that are going on and it's really kind of creating a separation where if when you look, and this is my personal opinion, and I'm speaking solely me myself personally, not anybody else, but when you look at the Division II right now, Division II has now become JUCO. And what I mean by that is you're really developing kids for 2 years, and then if they're really really good, they'll look to go up. Now, if they're a kid that's very loyal and very happy with the location of school, it's a good situation, they'll stay all 4 years. But I think you're going to see less and less of that over time. And I think right now with the transfer portal, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be there to stay. It's just how you use it, how you manage it. And I think a lot of the things go back to how you build relationships with your players, and that starts the recruiting process. And then once they get there, continue to develop on them, continue to maintain it, and then same thing too. Don't promise them anything that you can't truly deliver. I think a lot of coaches make that mistake in the recruiting process of, trying to get the kid to, commit and stuff, and they're promising all these things that, either they know deep down they really can, or they're just trying to, get the kid there. And I think you're better off just being straight up and honest. And if the kid chooses another school, he chooses another school, but you were transparent through the process as well. And I think down the line, if that kid ever is looking for a new school, you've built enough of a relationship with them that and you were transparent and honest that, hey, like, I know coach so and so, was very, upfront and transparent. I think that's the other thing too in the recruiting process now. Just be upfront with it in terms of, hey, you're a guy we like, you're a scholarship guy. Hey, you're a guy that, we just don't have a spot right now, but let's maintain a relationship, or, whatever it might be. Or, hey, we don't have you high on the board recruiting wise. I think just the more you can be transparent in the process, the cleaner it is for everybody. And try not to promise anything that you can't deliver. But I definitely, from the portal standpoint, it's changed because you're checking that thing daily, and it's a lot in terms of you look at recruiting. There really is no true dead period like it claims to be. I mean, it's constant, and it's hard for the roster management. And I think it's something that I think as a profession, we've really got to look to kind of navigate of, how do we handle it moving forward, in terms of, what it is, the limitations. There's a lot of factors in it. And I think it's how are we going to, maintain it to see, how the game is going to be. Because the hardest part right now with it is that, the college environment of the game that, we kind of remember growing up in was, hey, you went to a school and, you finished your degree and stuff. I think the concern from my end of it, and again, my personal opinion is that when you have the portal, you have guys constantly like leaving schools and playing somewhere, and they're even looking at limiting, I guess, the amount of times they can even do it. Are you having guys that are going to graduate and finish their degrees, and long after football, they're going to be in a position to be successful? So I think that's something that we really want to look into, and I definitely think the portal has been a changer. You're maintaining.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rumors and things that people suggest the NCAA should do to kind of restrict the portal a little bit just because of the chaos that ensues from it. I mean, you got people that are being drafted in the NFL that have been on 3, 4 different teams because of the portal. There's a lot to it, and maybe there should be more restrictions. But like you said, I don't think this is going anywhere anytime soon. Uh, It's I don't know. Everything's kind of leveled up where Division 1 football is now like a borderline professional league, and then everything under that's kind of jumped up a level. And I always said, as a high school coach, the moment that the kids in my program start to get paid more than I is when I'm out. And then like the year that I decided to leave was the exact same year that a couple other states have said NIL is okay in high school, and ours was one of them. And a couple of our kids picked up like this it's like an online thing where they have an NIL that was like you can basically get a discount for like sweatbands and gloves and things like that. But it was like NIL, and I was like, well, coincidentally, this is my last year, so
Yeah, I think the concern with it, and this is, I mean, this is kind of a scenario that we talked about with other coaches, and we've talked about too. Staff wise is the concern can be is all right. You get the NIL to the high school level, and you get a kid that is already signed and committed to such and such school. Does he play his senior year?
oh yeah,
And that can open up, a whole can of worms, and then you have guys out, the whole opt out thing and stuff, and that's I think an interesting conversation, and I think it's something that I hope it doesn't get to it and stuff because I mean that's the essence of high school football, Friday Night Lights, guys playing together, playing their senior year, but then with opting out, how does that play into that. And it's kind of, I think the hardest part of being a coach right now is just you got to find the balance of understanding that the system is not going to just go back to what it was.
right, right,
But you also know that it has to have, some kind of endpoint or limitations, or has to have some kind of model that we can kind of function in, and where, we're still graduating, players are still getting jobs, and you're still able to maintain and build a roster. But also, you're not hurting the high school game in terms of, kids having opportunities to go play places, kids having, opportunities to really build great teams at their high school where they don't have guys that opt out. So I just think and there's no kind of, specific, answer diagram. I think it's something that a lot of people need to sit down and just kind of have a conversation about. But I really think that if you go about it understanding that, this is still a relationship game, this is still a relationship business, this is still, the football is all about the team aspect. If you still go out at that manner, I still believe enough people, buy into that you need a team concept to still win and be successful. Now you may have to tweak it in terms of, hey, what are guys' individual goals? What do they want to achieve? Okay, well, are you doing what you want to do to achieve your individual goals, which by achieving your individual goals can play into the team concept and help the team, be successful. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and it's something that I don't know when they first put it in if they thought of all the variables and all the things that could happen with it, for sure. But I think it's finding a way to navigate it, and I think too, just have good, open, honest conversations about it, and establish viewpoints, and find a way to kind of solve it. As coaches, and I think the main thing is we're all about solving problems. If there's a problem or an issue, hey, how can we solve it? What's the best solution? How can we work through it? And I think that's what the coaching profession right now, the NCAA, I think they're trying to work through it. There's a lot of factors, variables, and parameters, and it's just, trial and error, and, just trying to see what can fit.
well, that's all the questions I have for you. So you had some for me,
Yeah. So I guess
and I cheated on
obviously the
my
first,
first
the,
tee
the
with
dinner one, it would be one. And then, I guess kind of the other thing too is, kind of what, I know I heard you run earlier episode and stuff, but what is your, um, with having coached and stuff like that, and then the podcast, which is awesome, and how you're connecting with people and stuff like that. What kind of brought you to the podcast standpoint? Like what was kind of that moment where it was like, you know what, like I'm gonna do this and it's gonna be helpful? Because like I said, I've listened to it. You know, you've had great people on and conversations, and it's been a go-to, especially on the road recruiting. So
All right, we'll start with my five people since I cheated already. Um, I mean, I would bring my dad back. I gotta talk to him now. I lost him when I was 17 years old, and there's so many questions I have for him. And every time I see one of my uncles, I'm asking thousands of questions, and just to compare kind of how I turned out to what he was like, and just to talk to him again. And everyone who's lost someone knows exactly what I'm talking about. I would probably have him there with my one of my favorite comedians, Tom Segura. My dad had a phenomenal sense of humor, and Tom Segura has a very similar, very dark one. So I think that them two talking would be hilarious. I'd do Mark Bell, who's a former power lifter. You know, the gym out in California. He's also an inventor. He also does a podcast. He does a whole bunch of things, but very inspirational to me. I've been following. He was in that documentary, Bigger, Faster, Stronger.
yes,
So I have a lot of respect for him. And then in the podcasting world, you go Pat McAfee because
yes,
he's hilarious and just the way he carries himself, it's like I don't know, that's unmatchable. And then the last one I kind of have to hit in bodybuilding is Ronnie Coleman, just because of his knowledge, expertise, and the legend that he is, and kind of seeing what he's turned into, where he's still like motivational and still committed to the sport, but he's full of riddled with injuries, and he still has a smile on his face every day, and still motivates people. So those are my
love it, love it. So mine have gone back and forth from a lot of them. You know, the first one would be my great grandmother. She was a huge influence. She was around all the time, and she always had, you know, great stories and a great sense of humor. So I mean, she would be one. Um, a guy I would love to have a conversation with, and it's my favorite book, and I'd highly recommend it to anybody that's a reader or looking for something kind of inspirational. Is Viktor Frankl. His book is Man's Search for Meaning, and so basically he was a psychologist, but he was a psychologist that went through the Holocaust, and he kind of writes his book from two perspectives. He writes it from the perspective as a survivor, and then he writes it from the perspective as a psychologist. And you know, there's a lot of really good stuff, but the big quote, you know, coming from that book is that, you know, everything can be taken from a man or a person, except for their will, their attitude of how they approach everything. And then I read it actually in high school. I read it in a philosophy class in high school. Um, and I've reread it several times, you know, in the past 10 to 15 years. And every time I read it, I pull something new from it. And it's a great book. And so I would love to have a conversation with him, you know, just about, you know, his experiences, you know, how he was able to, you know, kind of work through everything. And then even post, you know, once he became, you know, went back into psychology, you know, how he, you know, dealt with patients and stuff. So that would be, you know, my second one. Um, you know, from that standpoint. The third one would be the barbarian Hannibal, because I want to know how he got the elephants over the Alps, man. Like, how do you get elephants like in a time where there's like little to no technology like over the Alps? Like, how'd you do it? Like, I just want to know like how you did that. So that would, you know, that would be my third one. You know, from that standpoint. And then you know, I think it'd be great to Newt Rockney, you know, the Giffer and Notre Dame. I think that would be, as a coach, you know, that would be, you know, you know, a really cool one. I would love to, you know, kind of pick his brain, you know, about, you know, from that standpoint. And then more recently, I would say I was reading excuse me, I was reading you know, an autobiography, Eddie Robinson, who was at Grambling. I've been reading about him, and kind of just, you know, you talk about a guy that literally like built a program from, you know, scratch, did everything, painted the lines, you know, the AD, just everything, just, you know, would love to, you know, sit down with a conversation. That would be my grouping. Obviously, you know, it kind of, it changes, you know, over year,
five.
month to month, but I've always felt that that question is a great icebreaker. It can really, you know, get people to kind of open up, and you know, I've yeah, I've definitely done that. The other question I have for you is, you know, kind of what are you doing now from a training standpoint, from a powerlifting standpoint, you know, bodybuilding stuff. What's kind of your goal for the year? What do you have upcoming? Anything meet wise, you know, kind of lifting wise, or, you know, anything, you know, from a goal standpoint that you're really looking forward to here in this next year?
Going back to your podcasting question, what brought me here was during the pandemic, like you said, we were all looking for something to do. I just hammered away listening to podcasts as I worked out, and that filled my time. I really got away from listening to music and listening to podcasts, and then looked at doctoral programs, considered writing a book with all the stuff that I've done because I knew I wasn't going to be coaching forever. So you know what? Let me just talk to people and have conversations, and just kind of started there. I don't really have any specific goals. What's today? The third. I've eaten perfect exactly on my diet for 63 days out of 63 days this year. My body has changed in every way that I've wanted it to. My strength has gone up. My size has gone up. I'm heading back towards looking like a bodybuilder. And I don't know that I want to compete necessarily. I tweaked my shoulder yesterday in a deadlift. So I'm down and out for probably a week in some of those movements. I don't know. I just want to give it a couple more months and see where things end up. I could see myself doing a bodybuilding show towards the end of the year, or I could see myself just kind of enjoying being healthy and not having to hold my breath while I tie my shoes like I used to. So, um, yeah, we got about 6 minutes left. So apparently the free version of Zoom has a short timer on it. So
Yeah,
anything
no,
else before we cut out of here?
no, I think I would encourage anybody that to listen to this podcast. It's great in terms of just the content and networking and connecting, and I think too is just the connection piece with people. All my interactions that I've had throughout my coaching career, and then even just come up as a player is just the relationships, and I think to any coaches out there that listen to this podcast is just remember through amongst everything, it's about the players. It's about the guys you're coaching. It's about the relationship, or the women you're coaching. Whatever group of people that you're coaching, it's about them. It's not about you. It's about them. How you can develop them, as a person. How you can develop them as you know a player, obviously from the athletic standpoint, but how you can make an impact on their life that's long lasting, and that 10, 15, 20 years down the line you've made a change. And I think the best compliment and the best award or win as a coach is that you get an invitation to your players the day they get married or have their wedding.
Right.
That's when that you really made a difference, impact in their life, and that they wanted you there on their special day. And that's what I think we should all strive to achieve, and really know it's about long lasting relationships.
All right. Well, where can some of the followers see you? What's your social media handles?
Yeah, my Twitter X, I guess it's X now, is at dbearddan. Is my social media. I'm on Instagram too. If you search Dan Beard, it should come up. I don't know my exact handle with that. My wife helped me set up Instagram. I'll be honest with you. And then my email's on the website, but feel free, anytime that anybody ever has any specific questions, whether it's coaching, whether it's anything, ever just reach out. It's always great to connect with different people, and just appreciative, the opportunity to pop on the podcast, talk a little bit, have some good conversations. Always good to connect with, reconnect with a good friend and stuff. And it's been fun, and I think that the other thing too is just the relationship over the years, and it's glad to see you're doing well, man. And just the way you impacted that program there, from how you turned it around, to the playoff run, to the winning seasons. I mean, you really built that thing up, and did a really nice job with it. Getting the community involved, and the atmosphere at the games. I mean, it was awesome. So I mean, I credit to you, and I hope your listeners know about that. And I think you should do a podcast on that process if you haven't already, in terms of that. But you did a phenomenal job with that in the community and bringing everybody together. So like I said, it's been awesome. It's always good to reconnect with a good friend and chat it up.
All right. Well, thanks again. And yeah, maybe someday we'll have another one when you're a head coach somewhere, or you got a bunch more wins under your belt.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate it, man. Take it easy, and enjoy it. And if you need anything, give me a shout.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
So,
Well, Coach Beard, you motivated me, and there's some things that I'm definitely going to highlight for the college recruits and the kids that I work with daily, the kids that have aspirations of playing college athletics, specifically football. There's some things that you highlighted there that I'm going to showcase, and I'm going to be your best advocate in our building, as well as I know our head coaches, and even talking to him some today. A lot of those principles about characteristics and grades and weight room, a lot of those things shine true with every single football program and every high school coach for sure. has been a huge advocate of those things. I am reminded of one story, and Coach talked about you really growing relationships with kids and kind of developing a rapport with them, both for recruiting and just for being successful. You never know what kids are going through. And it reminded me of a story, and at the time, I didn't want to bring it up too much because it was pretty personal, but I also didn't know timing wise where were things at, but I did want to share. So when I was in high school, and I've told this story a bunch of times, my dad was very ill. He had multiple sclerosis. Now, when I was in high school, these little silicone bracelets started to take over. The Lance Armstrong one came out, the Live Strong, probably like my freshman, sophomore year, and everybody had one. That was the only one that people had. And they would last a couple months, they'd break and fall off and whatever. But it was right around my sophomore, junior year that other causes and other companies started to produce them. My senior year, I guess it was my junior year, I had a red one, probably after football season, but it was for multiple sclerosis, which is what my dad had. And it said hope on it. And I wore that thing matter of fact, I have it in my gym bag right over there. I wore that thing every single day, and I took it everywhere I've ever been in competition. I couldn't wear it in my bodybuilding show because you wear almost nothing, but I had it with me. I wore it in my powerlifting meet, both of them. I've tucked it in my sock during game day as a coach. I wore it on my wrist as a player before it broke one day. That thing has been with me everywhere. But I remember before the very first game of my senior season, and I had not worked with this position coach yet. He had worked with my brother, so he knew a little bit about us. But I remember walking up to my head coach, like we got off the bus, we're kind of going through our motions, getting ready for our game, but we're at an opponent's field. It was at O&J Roberts High School. And I walked up to my head coach and I said, hey, coach, you have some tape I could throw around this thing. And the rule was you got to take them off. There was no exceptions except for this one. But you can't wear these in high school. You can wear wristbands, but you can't wear these little things. Fingers get caught on them, things snap, things break, and you don't want that. So I said, coach, you got a piece of tape I could throw around here? And he handed me the roll of tape. I took care of it. I handed it back and I walked away. My position coach, my defensive line coach, Tom Wickersham, which someday I'll have him on, he didn't say it to me, but he wanted to. And he turned to the head coach at the time and was like, why is he wearing this stupid pink thing? Make him take it off. And then they explained him a story what the cause was, and he was like, whoa. And he had lost someone dearly in his life at around the same age as I when he was in high school. So the immediate connection and the immediate depth of, man, he really had no idea what I was going through, just exploded. And we all of a sudden had this connection of, we've both been through very similar things in our school years. And I mean, he became my biggest cheerleader, my best coach, someone who has always been supportive, someone to this day has been a huge advocate of mine. So I appreciate it. But again, like Coach said, you do not know what these kids are going through. So I tell that story, and no lie, every year when I told that story to the football programs, one or two kids would come up to me and be like, hey, coach, that's why I wear this. Or, hey, coach, I'm going through the same thing. Or, hey, coach, I appreciate the story. I want to find something that I can use and share that is something that represents something special in my life. And I told that story first year coaching. And I told it around the time of my dad's death. The following game, I had players wrap their wrists and write my dad's initials on their wrist. I didn't ask them to. I thought that was extremely special. And I told that story 8 years later when that one player who did it first was now a coach on my staff. I told that to the JV team at the time. They needed a little bit of motivation, a little bit of pep. And I explained to them how this thing is much bigger than just a game and how you never know what somebody's going through until they tell you or until you find out. And I told them that story. I told them how it was about their assistant coach that they knew pretty well. And same thing, kids got excited. They wrote my dad's initials, which again, I asked them not to because the game isn't about me. But something special happened, and there's kind of always a new layer. And I have a picture of it in my phone. In the threshold of my office, where a football office was, on the ground, like as you enter the threshold, there was a piece of tape. My dad's initials right there on the floor. Like a kid wore it, peeled it off, put it on the floor, and was like, that's for coach. Again, something I didn't ask for, but one of those little things that you grow a connection with, and you never know what that kid has gone through. So again, thanks, Coach Beard. Thanks for joining me. A Zoom call is apparently my weakness. Had a lot of technical difficulties, but you fought through it, and I appreciate your time. Always been a huge supporter of our program and me as a coach, and I hope I've returned the favor. I've always been a huge fan of yours, and now that Millersville's having the success that they're having, I'm one of their biggest fans, following every single game, and I hope to continue to support Millersville and Coach Beard in his career and wish them all the best. That's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. Hope you got something out of it. I know I did. You can find me at Coach P_knows, where I post a lot of content, a lot of things, and if nothing else, something to hopefully motivate somebody somewhere, somehow. Have a great Tuesday. We'll see you next week. I'm out.